And then over time, I got much deeper into the music. I now have a very large understanding of the international English music scene and a decent enough understanding of the Indian Bollywood scene, but I'm no expert on Bollywood music. But what happened over time was that the fact that I was listening to music all through the day, and at that time, the first radio station to launch in India ever was Radio City 90 back then 91, which was in Bangalore. So Bangalore had the first FM, the first 24-hour privately run phase one radio station. And they were piping music in every room, including the toilets. So wherever you sat and worked, you just had the radio on. And I think at some point, some switch went off in me, and I never listened to. I don't play music in my car. I don't have a music system at home. I only listen to music when my wife or my son insist on playing music, and then I listen to music. But it's bizarre. I don't know what happened.
I can imagine with the dancer wife, how do you do this?
Yeah. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah.
So till date, there's no favorite song also?
Oh, I have a couple of artists I'm really fond of. Chris Christopher and Bob Dylan. I love Harry Styles. I love Taylor Swift. I think Taylor Swift is friggin' awesome. Yeah, I do.
He's a Swiftie?
I'm a Swiftie, dude. I'm a Swiftie. I love her. I think she's incredible. I think The Weeknd is an incredibly talented musician.
Knowing you, Nodi, I don't know if I should take this seriously or not.
No, I'm serious, yeah. I love them. I mean, like, and then of course Imagine Dragons and Kings of Leon, amazing band. So I feel like I cycle through music and I come back.
I don't know. Do I believe this deep? After hearing all this, I won't ask you about current day music anyway.
Yeah. Hey, no, you know what? I think a lot of people say this, but I think what's happened is that mainstream content, whether it's television or movies or music, are becoming safer and safer. And that means giving the same thing more and more importance rather than going wider and wider. And the thing is that the wider you go, the more risk is involved. Do you understand what I'm saying?
No, I'm not able to get. Like, if you
All
could
right.
dumb it down for people like me.
So there are movies that you know are going to make money.
Yeah.
Like your Marvel movies, Spielberg movies, you know that you've got a 80% chance of doubling your money. So the producers want to make more of those movies, and therefore they're willing to put more money behind those movies. But then there are offbeat movies like American Fiction or Triangle of Sadness or Robot Dreams. And these movies, you have a less than 30% chance of profit. So producers don't want to take that risk. And because all the content that's being created now goes through a cycle of economic testing,
Right.
it makes the choices become narrower until people like you come around and say that we'll support indie production, we'll support people who have a creative desire and a creative vision, and we believe in that and we will support that vision. So the problem with mainstream music right now is that it's become really safe and therefore really one-dimensional. But the range of music that you have access to is incredible, and there are some incredibly talented people out there who I think are amazing.
You just put it out right, like, in terms of talent, there's dearth of it. But in terms of the quality of music that comes out today, I'm not saying this because I run Bob's of sorts, but I'm saying this with the way music is being consumed. It's just about, you getting your attention caught in 3 to 4 seconds. And if you have that hook in you, that becomes a hit. So there is no value for how music was created back in the day with lyrics, with the actual rhythm of the song, with actually having to feel the soul of the song, the moment of the song, which is not the case of late. And I was just hearing this the other day, I kid you not, this is a Billie Eilish and Charlie XCX song, and I was just listening to it on the radio. I kid you not, the lyrics were so below the belt, derogatory. And
is this that underwear song? I want to know.
Yeah.
Your underwear. Yeah, so stupid. Such a stupid ass song.
And then suddenly my friend was like, let me just change it. He played some retro. It went back to like Journey. I was like, finally, music.
Yeah.
But that's again, it's the need of the hour. It's what has been created. A demand has been set as to how people should listen to music, which I hope will change in time. And I believe the indie scene will bring
it back. I hope it does too. Because you're right. We had 40-second intros. We had 7-minute songs. We had in the middle of Guns N' Roses' November Rain, they're like, yeah, throw one guitar, give Slash like another. I think he's got like 80-second guitar riff in between instrumental bit, and you're like, who's doing that now, right? Because it's too much of a risk to do it. But that's the stuff that creates legends forever, right? I mean, Bohemian Rhapsody. I mean, even back in the day, no one wanted to play Bohemian Rhapsody, but it's now like a top 10 on anyone's all-time song list. I love Queen as well. I forgot to mention Queen. I have to represent the Parsis. Yes. Yeah, I think it's important. But there is this bizarre thing that every generation does, which is that we look at the next generation and be like, what crappy music is this, right? We look at Swala la la and what is your what. But you go back to your generation, they were singing the same shit, right? We were singing about drugs. Pink is my favorite color. It's about drugs. We were Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds and drugs only. And what is that song? A la 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 long, a la 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 la, yeah, Sweat, right? And if you try out, I'm going to push it some more. Like, no way that shit is going to fly today, right? So we had our own range of crappy, dumbass songs as well, just as this generation does. And you got to just sort through and find the gems in there.
What do you like?
Yeah.
It's an ongoing debate about the current music scenario and how the lyrics are being made or the songs are being made. But going back in time to the radio side as well, I actually spoke about this to somebody that when radio started employing people back in the day, in the initial phase, it was more like a part-time career, was it?
Well, yes and no. So when I was in All India Radio and World Space, Indigo, before Indigo became a FM station, it was definitely part-time. So I was doing my MBA, studying for my MBA and doing radio on the side. It was my side hustle. But once Radio City came in, and of course at that time it was a monopoly, so we were all very well paid and very well known at the time. I think there was a golden era from about 2004 to about 2015, 16 maybe, where radio attracted the top talent or creative talent in the city. So anyone who was really witty or clever or creative wanted to be on the radio because it gave you a platform to get noticed, and you were really, really well paid. And then I think around 2014-15, maybe 15-16, with the onset of smartphones and Instagram and YouTube, and the best creative minds stopped coming to radio and started moving to the digital space. So I think that's been the journey. So there was a time when it was a side hustle, then there was a golden era where it was an amazing job to have, and now I don't know whether it still attracts the same kind of highbrow talent that it used to.
There are many factors that play heed to this particular phenomenon of the talent, and there are outside the radio industry as well. I'm going to come to that, but also during that time, like you mentioned, like everybody talks about the golden era of every single time and that's gone by, right? And even when it comes to radio, in Bangalore, it was the golden era because the kind of talent that we heard.
I just want to say thank you for saying in Bangalore, because I'm sure your viewers are all over the world. And if I say the golden era of radio was from 2004 to 2014, people in New Zealand and Sri Lanka and Canada and America are just going to think I'm an idiot. India got FM only in 2000. So we didn't have FM radio before that, which is why our golden era is different from the rest of the world. So yes, in India and in Bangalore.
We have such global audience in India. But coming back to it, the 2000, it was because of the talent, and also to a certain extent you guys were educators. I don't know if you want to take that term, because you brought in information to people and you educated us with the music as well. Right? I don't know if you want to ever go about it that tack, but there's one thing I want to tell you is Bangalore was a very cosmopolitan culture back in the day. There was Kannada, there was Hindi, there was Tamil, there was, name the language we spoke it all, right? Yeah. But one language that connected, or rather two languages that connected with us, is one, the local language Kannada, and then there was English. But also because of mainstream media back then was predominantly more on DD and Hindi, there was sprinkles of Hindi too. Right?
Absolutely.
Now there is a shift that happens from you starting off as an English radio station. And then you get into becoming Kannada. And then you bring in Hindi as well. And then you mix it like a khichdi or an upma. Does that work strategically, or did it work then at least?
I think if your agenda was to make a really shit product, then that was a good strategy. If you didn't want to do that, that was not the right strategy. You know what happened is that from 2000 to 2006, as a monopoly, Radio City, we were the primary radio station. We had 90% of the population listening, or 90% of the radio listening population listening to us. What happened over there was that because we were a monopoly, we could schedule, we could create what was called appointment listening, which meant that we could say Sunday mornings, Chow Chow Baat with Chaitanya Hegde,
Right.
and we'll do kick-ass Kannada music. And then every night from 11 onwards, we'll play retro Hindi. Or every Wednesday and Friday from 8 to 11, we'll play Rebel Rock with John C. and Santosh Nanak and Sagi. So we had different time slots, and then we had Bollywood music, we had Hindi, retro, we had English rock, we had retro English, then we had the world... the Putamaya World Chart Show for global music. Then we had Kannada. We even had a South Indian mix, which was Tamil, Malayalam, Telugu, all mixed together on a show. So there was music for everyone. And then, as economic decision making came in, and they started saying that, yeah, but this show's making more money than this show. We don't need this show. Let's do more of this show. And eventually you get like a kind of monoculture on a radio station, which is really sad, because I always believe like a radio station is like, it's like a pillar, and you're going to put, say, a female RJ in the morning, a young late 20s. So it starts leaning, the personality of the radio station starts leaning towards that demographic. So then you say, okay, to balance that out, we're going to have a rock show with two guys in the evening that'll pull it this side. And then you say, yeah, but we'll have a retro Hindi music over here, and you pull it this way. So the personality of the radio station was dynamic and floated through the day. But as people came in and said that, no, format radio is the way to go. It's like you have to be consistent right through the day, and we have to choose one format, which is the way it works in most Western developed, well, I don't want to use the word developed, but when I say developed, I mean from radio developed nations, because they've had radio from the 50s and 60s. They need to do format radio, but in India, we didn't need to do this, but we succumbed to doing it because of economic pressure, and I think it was a bad decision.
And just the way you explained it,
Yeah.
gave me a perspective in terms of how to program my station as well. This is why it just comes just so naturally without even knowing it. But then, you also mentioned about that time why it was a bad decision.
Yeah.
Now, just to take you back or bring you back into today, we are a very inclusive society.
Yeah.
We always were in Bangalore. I'm not going to deny that. But
Yeah.
in terms of inclusive talking, in terms of content, we consume content of different languages and stuff. So if you would say we can put in something like this, like a mixture of different languages, and make it like the fabric of Bangalore, not like a full-fledged show running across as saying one language, but the soul of Bangalore language, the colloquial Bangalore language. If we would do that today, do you think that would be a good sell?
On a FM radio station? So I think there are many things that are at play over here, right? There is also the cultural pendulum that swings back and forth. And you're right, India was Bangalore was an extremely open city. In fact, when Kempe Gowda put the 4 pillars, that's the famous story we all know about. What we don't tell ourselves was that he was doing this to invite people into the city. And the petes, whether it's Chickpet or Bangarpet or whatever other petes, the original central hub, they were populated by people who came from outside Bangalore, right? So we've always been a city that has welcomed migrants.
Right.
And that's the fundamental fabric of our city, is that Bob, Da, Macha, Ra, Bhaiya, these are all words that we can use commonly on the street, and all of them would be accepted, because it's just the fabric of our city. But as that cultural pendulum swings back, the people who feel the most ownership over the city tend to start pushing back against this kind of cultural syncretism that happens. And I can't stand in judgment of it being right or wrong. personally, I think it's wrong. Personally, I think the more shades of color you can put to anything, whether it's your food, your music, your radio station, or your city, the more shades you have, the more interesting it is to live in. So, personally, I would love for it to be even more welcoming to the migrant communities. Uh, but I can't say that it's wrong, because there's an equally sound argument to say that the eradication of cultural heritage is something that is worrisome, that we don't want to lose these cultural heritages. So, I mean, and not that migrants remove that, but it's a complicated, it's not an argument we can have in this forum. So, in this current cultural, political cultural environment, to want to do what you're talking about, it would be very
Challenging.
brave. Yeah, it would be very brave. I mean, if you could pull it off, great. I mean, like, in my head, if you said that you were going to do an FM radio station that plays non-Kannada South Indian music, and you say that I'm going to do Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, Konkani, Tulu, and mix it all together in one radio station, I think you would have, it would be a cultural moment. But whether you could do that without upsetting people, I doubt it very much. I think a lot of people would be very upset.
Very debatable in terms of upsetting. I'll tell you why. Because today, being in the radio scene for at least, I think, about 9 years, and I've seen how brands have gone on to change languages and also spread a certain culture. I'm not saying I'm against a certain community or a language, but I'm just saying, as a person from the city, we come from an era of radio of English music and the local language, and then we've gone down to predominantly just Hindi, which has been like when the corporate influx happened. And the idea it was done was because they think the markets are bigger in the Hindi sector.
Yes.
I am not going to deny that the numbers have increased of people and migrants over the years, but then you're not focusing on the people who are part of the city.
Yeah.
And because of that, a lot of them today don't listen to the radio, the localites.
Yeah.
And if they do, it's only like your Big FM, it's your Radio Mirchi and Radio City.
Yeah.
It's the Kannada audience. Now, I would, like how we always say Bengaluru and Bangalore.
Yeah.
So Bengaluru listens to Kannada radio stations.
Yeah.
Bangalore doesn't listen to radio stations at all.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel it's as simple as I can tell you. Danish is
but
radio.
Bangalore listens to radio.
Bangalore listens to radio. But in terms of one of the talents you identified, Danish, he does content that resonates with every Bangalorean.
Yeah.
Because he brings these characters out that define our city. And I'm not saying we can make this a success story, but somewhere I feel people are being inclusive. Yes, there are going to be certain emotions hurt because of certain languages being played. But then when you portray the fabric of the city to be in a certain liking, I think people can be understanding.
I absolutely agree with you. So I want to just reposition two things. First, I did not discover Danish Seth. Danish Seth was a beautiful talent who was always on his own journey. I was just lucky enough to join him in the beginning parts of his journey. I claim no ownership of discovering him at all. But the point you're making is super, which is that as corporates decided where the money was, it fundamentally, in a flawed manner, changed the course of content. So there was stories that the Hindi-speaking software engineers spend more money than Kannada-speaking software engineers. So play more Hindi music, so we get more Hindi-speaking software engineers because they'll spend more money. These were all false narratives, right? They were not true, as we see today. But what happened is that, as we spoke about in the beginning, is the corporate world is being controlling and making choices. They're forcing content choices to be economically sound rather than creatively sound. And when they're economically sound or economically safe, it means that you're going to go safer and safer. That had to play the Kannada music or English music or Hindi music. But if you actually made a radio station that reflects the intricate fabric of Bangalore, which is Kannada and Hindi and English and Tamil and Christian and Hindu and Muslim and Anglo-Indian and Parsis and all these things that mix together and incredible biryani from Kerala and amazing neer dosas from North Canara, and put it all together, I think that would make the most interesting radio station we've had to date, and I would love it. I would even support it succeeding. But how are you going to fund it? Because the people who control the money to make these decisions don't want to take a risk like this. But your idea is creatively sound and creatively beautiful.
I'm only thinking in terms of what we lack as a city. I'm not saying this because this is a great creative product, but thought about this as a Bangalorean as to what are we even getting in terms of a media outlet that doesn't resonate our fabric at all.